As some of you know, I'm a channel, and all that simply means, it's a really beautiful name, all it simply means is I'm able to connect myself to higher vibrations. And the way that I do that is, some of you older people will remember the old PABX telephone system. You youngies don't know what we're talking about. Where you take the plug and you plug it up to a higher whole, an energy. And that's all that channeling is. It's connecting up to higher energies. All of you are very capable of this. I have no abilities that you don't have. The difference between me and you is that I have concentrated, I have connected myself, and through my own self-will, I've applied my energy to being able to do that. There are other areas of my life where I haven't put energy, such as mathematics. Not a good area for me. I put very little energy into that, so I still count on my fingers. So it's just a case of where you put your energy and where you desire to put your energy. And that's what I've done for many years. And I did this because I was curious. I wanted to know the truth. I've always been a truth seeker. When I was in my 20s, I went off and became a journalist. Why? Because I wanted to uncover the truth and change the world. So I did that for a while and realized nothing happened. The world didn't change because I knew the truth. And so I went beyond that into deeper levels. And so what happened to me about just over a year ago is a spiritual energy who called herself Mary Magdalene came to me in vision, because I meditate every day like most people do who do this sort of work. And at first I was very surprised. I thought, why me? Of all the women you could have chosen. And I tried to push this away. And all my friends will tell you this whole story about Lesley pushing Mary away. This went on for several months. I actually started to get very sick and unwell with it all because it's an energy that was trying to come through. So in the end, all sorts of things happened in my life that I had very little work to do. So I sat down and decided, okay, I'm going to just let this happen. And so I connected with Mary and I went into the Akashic records. Are all of you familiar with the Akashic? Is there anybody here who would like me to explain it a bit more? Yes, that's fine. And we're not all expected to know these things. What the Akashic is, it's a Sanskrit word for the incredible multi-dimensional videotaping that's happening of your life, my life, and everybody's life. And it's like a hall of records, and you can go in and virtually pull down a tape or a DVD and play it. There's no machinery like we're used to anymore. It's just purely through the will of the mind. You can connect into the Akashic and see your own life history and your soul history. Many of you have heard of people who've passed over, who are taken into the hall of records and shown their life. That's the Akashic. They've gone into the Akashic and shown where they've gone wrong in life or right in life or what's happened. And then afterwards they evaluate, okay, did we achieve what we came here to do? Sort of like a meeting with your guardian angels and so forth. So you've all done this. And you can all do this as well. You can connect into that. And so that's what Mary did to me. It's like she held my hand and took me into the Akashic. And before I knew it, I was taken back 2,000 years to the time of Jesus and Mary. And for me, it's very much a full body connection. I don't just hear it or see it. I'm there. My body feels it. My body goes through situations. I actually sweat if it's hot. I feel cold if it's cold there, no matter what the environment of my body in this lifetime. So I went back there. I could smell the smells. I could hear the distant calls of birds and dogs barking. I was literally there. I could feel the cobblestones beneath my feet and the broken stones. I could smell the dust and the hot air. I was literally there. But I felt like a little ghost or a little mini-cam floating around watching the events of 2,000 years ago. But the story isn't about Jesus entirely, although it's obviously in the book. It's about Mary's story, the story of the feminine and how it was taken and distorted. So the true story of Mary is that she was Jesus' spiritual equal. They were twin flames, or soulmates if you prefer that word. And they had both decided to enter into the earth plane on a joint ministry. It was not a single ministry, it was a joint ministry. And lifetime after lifetime they had incarnated together. And I go through this in the book because they made a soul promise. And many of you are under soul promises from previous lifetimes. Some of them are, by the way, are promises of poverty that you may have taken as nuns and monks that you may be still suffering under. But that's another workshop for another day. But they made a soul promise to incarnate as many times as needed to seed within the earth plane what we now describe as Christ consciousness, or if you prefer, ascension consciousness or higher consciousness. It's just terminology. It simply means that you are able to access the fullness of your soul, the fullness of your energies, not just part. Most of us, when we're children, we're taught we can only access this area of your life. Okay? You're a girl, so therefore you get married, you have babies. This is your life. You're a boy, therefore you choose a career. This is your life, yes? But in the Christ consciousness, there are no limitations because you're fully awakened to your divine God self. And the divine God self, with whom we are all created, remember we're made in God's image, not the physical image, the spiritual image. So all the abilities of God you have, but they're lying dormant until you come into Christ consciousness and they awaken. God is neither male nor female. God is the conglomeration of both energies. And so therefore we need, as beings on this planet, to understand both male and female energies and bring them into oneness. You understand? It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? This is not rocket science, is it? It's so obvious. And so therefore the twin souls of Mary and Jesus incarnated many times over, each time laying more seeds. And the final incarnation for Jesus was 2,000 years ago, and Mary also. And both of them brought their ministry. And had you been there 2,000 years ago, and many of you souls in the room were there, and you can feel that, it's one of the reasons you're in this room today, they brought forth the truth of the male energy and the female energy. And to this day, we have the male energy. Jesus' teachings are beautiful, sweet, and pure. And I don't think anybody here could possibly criticize them, not in their purity. However, they are not complete without the feminine teachings. The feminine teachings of nourishing, natural connection to the earth, understanding of the emotional body, all that is feminine, giving birth, that is a basic requirement of Christ consciousness. For the God force is creative. The God force gives birth. The God force extends itself and nurtures and nourishes. It's an element of the God force. It is a feminine element. But it's a feminine element that is missing, for the most part, in our modern world. This is why we're living in a world that is so badly polluted. This is why we're living in a world that has war after war after war. This is why we live in a world where our politicians don't seem to learn from the mistakes of the past. That we have a war currently that is almost an echo of the Vietnam War. We have these situations again and again and again. Why? Because the masculine energy is not tempered or balanced with the feminine energies. Masculine energy is not negative or wrong, but it needs to be balanced. Feminine energy also needs to be balanced. Let's make no mistake. This is not about overturning masculinity and letting femininity take over. That is also a mistake. That would then end up being a different kind of problem, but a problem nonetheless. We need both energies, male, female, in balance and equality, both within your inner self, your psyche, and outwardly within the world. It's so clear, it's so common, it's so obvious, isn't it? You agree? And so 2,000 years ago, these two great teachers came to this world with those two beautiful gifts. But they weren't allowed to share them. Those teachings were distorted and twisted. Luckily, however, the ancient manuscripts that were written around that time were hidden. Some in the Dead Sea and some in Nag Hammadi in northern Egypt. Because shortly after Jesus ascended, Mary went to Egypt and created the first churches. And there is evidence, this is not just me coming from channeling, there is concrete evidence that supports that. I say to you, go to Egypt, you will see evidence of Mary everywhere. Sometimes it's distorted with the Virgin Mary's story, but it's very much Mary Magdalene's energy. And she wrote her own gospel, and it was rolled up and put away in papyrus and put in Nag Hammadi in northern Egypt. But when it was taken out of the jar, the last 2 or 3 pages had been torn and ripped, and so it was lost. However, because I'm able to channel with Mary, I was able to restore them through her, and again, that information is in this book. And so that's what happened. And then about 400 years after Jesus and Mary, there was a conversions of all of the heads of church, and they sat down and decided what books went in the Bible and what didn't. You've heard all about this story, haven't you? We all know about this one. Don't like that one, don't like that one. And so many of the books were taken out, and some books that they felt were safe were kept there. And these are the books that upheld the masculine viewpoint and the masculine energy. But they still had this woman, Mary, who was the first to see the risen Jesus. And she was around all the time in the Gospels, going around anointing people and doing things. So we had to do something about Mary. We couldn't just ignore her. They tried ignoring her, didn't work. So her name was blackened, and she was turned into the penitent prostitute, of which we think of Mary Magdalene to this day. There is no evidence that she was ever a prostitute. There's nothing even in the Bible that she was a prostitute. So even in the common New Testament, there is no evidence, and yet it's common folklore. This is because they didn't understand her energy.